Do you think people could still have you as Prime Minister if we vote to leave?
Yes, because what's on the ballot paper on the 23rd of June is, do we want to stay in the European Union or do we want to leave the European Union?
But it means they would have decided against your judgment on the economy and crucial issues like immigration.
But of course, it's my judgment and my manifesto that said we're going to hold this renegotiation, we're going to have a referendum, and that's and then we accept the instructions of the British people.
Does it not undermine your position?
Well, I think it's important people know the government is not impartial. We're not saying on the one hand, on the other hand, we had a cabinet discussion and a decision, and the government is saying very clearly, we think it is in Britain's interest, we'll be safer, we'll be stronger, crucially we'll be better off, as these figures out today showing that we could lose 400,000 jobs in the services sector. So the government's got a very clear position, and we're putting that out.
But the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, Theresa Villiers, said on this show, key job, you must admit, in your government, said, no, you're wrong, your figures are wrong, and you're wrong about wanting to remain in Europe. It's hard to imagine you could then sit down and talk about big issues after that.
But we haven't stopped sitting down and talking about big issues while this referendum is going on. You know, we still are holding National Security Council meetings and cabinet meetings and other meetings and discussing, for instance, the importance of maintaining security in Northern Ireland. Look, of course there are passionate arguments. But I think, actually, it is perfectly possible to hold a referendum, have a result, and then get on with the job of governing the country.
What do you say to the Leave campaigners that are saying that you're just scaremongering, though, and that figure of 400,000 jobs, we don't know that for sure, the £4,000 that you said last night in the debate that it's going to cost a family, we can't be sure that that's actually going to be the case, that the pound could collapse if we were to leave. They are saying all you're doing is scaremongering and trying to scare people.
First of all,
with fear.
I think it is a pretty unique situation where you've got all of the international and national organisations, the Bank of England, the Treasury, the OECD, the International Monetary Fund, all of these people, 9 out of 10 economists, all saying there would be a shock to the British economy. And so I don't think you can accuse the government of scaremongering when that is happening. The IMF, their job is to tell prime ministers when their economy faces risks. The job of the Governor of the Bank of England is to warn about and mitigate against risks to our economy. And he says the biggest domestic risk is a British exit from the European Union. So I feel I'm doing my job by saying, and I profoundly believe this, I mean, I really think there are big risks.
The control that we will gain back by leaving would be a benefit in those terms.
Let's take the control.
That's the argument that Theresa Villiers was saying this morning. We would get control again, and that's crucial here.
Well, let's take this control argument. So we leave the single market, which damages, for instance, our car makers, our insurance companies, financial services and others, because they're not going to have the same access. That's the damage we do, and I think they should now accept that jobs would be lost. Now, what's the control we really get? Those car makers, if they want to sell back into the single market, they still have to meet all of the rules, all of the regulations, but we won't be there helping to set them. So think of electric cars. Let's take an example for the future, right? I want us to be a leader in electric cars. We should be round the table in the European Union writing the rules so they're good for Toyota, good for Nissan, good for Jaguar Land Rover. If we're not there, the rules will be written, but they'll be written by the Germans and the French, so they're good for Peugeot, good for Citroën, good for BMW, and good for Mercedes. That would be not more control, but less control. It would be a very bad thing for the world's 5th biggest economy to do, to lock yourself out of the body that actually makes the rules that affects your life.
OK, well, there are other countries we can trade with, of course, and one of those is America.
Yes. And
I want to talk to you about Donald Trump. Now, you've talked about his immigration policy. You said it was stupid, divisive and wrong. He did an interview with Good Morning Britain presenter Piers Morgan for ITV, and he said that he's not stupid, and actually it will be very hard to have a relationship with you as a Prime Minister and with Britain after you made comments like that.
Well, I was making a comment on a specific proposal that he had, which was to ban Muslims from entering the United States of America. I wouldn't remove any of the adjectives that I used to describe that policy. In fact, I think I'd added one the other day, which I think it would be a dangerous policy because it would divide. It somehow tries to paint all Muslims with the brush of extremism, which is completely unfair.
Do you think it'd be difficult to have a relationship with Donald Trump?
But anyway, look, the good news is, my understanding is he's already dropped that proposal. I mean, not least because there are millions of Muslims living in America, you know, and making a great contribution to that country, as there are well over 1 million British Muslims here making a fantastic contribution to our country. So that proposal's been dropped, which I think is the right thing to do. But look, I will await the outcome of the US elections. I won't get involved in any way.
He's going to be here in a month's time, though. Will you give him a call and get the relationship flowing ahead of time?
Whoever wins that election, I'm sure the British Prime Minister will have a good relationship with them, as we always have done. And of course, if candidates come through the UK during the campaigning season, as they've done in past years, and I've met them, whether I was leader of the opposition or Prime Minister, happy to do so again.
Do you think you could get on with Donald Trump then? Do you think you could become...
I'm sure, as I say, look, the special relationship is bigger than the individuals involved. I'm
Okay,
sure that we'd find a way.